And welcome back. My first guest is Clarkstown Police Officer Kevin Shea, a U.S. Navy veteran and member of the reserves. Welcome, Officer Shea.
Good morning.
So delighted to have you on the program. This is actually our 44th episode since we started this program about three and a half years ago. And on each one of these programs, we have a segment for a veteran. And seeing that you're a veteran of the United States Navy and a member of the U.S. Navy Reserves, also a JAG officer, we thought it would be great to have you on and talk a little bit about your experience. So we're going to really just kind of kick it off with a little bit about your background for the benefit of our viewers, where you were born, raised, and went to school.
I was born and raised here in Clarkstown. My parents have been residents since the early 70s. I have four brothers. We all went through the Clarkstown schools. My dad taught at Clarkstown South for 35 or so years.
Mm-hmm.
And so born and raised here, and then went away to college at Stony Brook, and then went to law school after that and went to the Navy just after I graduated law school.
So what year did you graduate high school?
1999.
99. And then you went on to Stony Brook, and then what law school did you go to?
New York Law School.
New York Law? Okay. And then, at some point you joined the military. What made you do that?
Well, my brothers were a big influence on me. Like I said, I have four brothers. My oldest brother went to the United States Naval Academy, was a Marine logistics officer. My two brothers beneath him were both U.S. Navy SEALs,
Mm-hmm.
and my little brother was an enlisted Marine who did communications work. So I kind of saw them go in. It was something I'd always wanted to do as well. And as kind of things occurred in our nation, it was something that I was kind of inspired by and felt like I should do something
Mm-hmm.
in my part. And they were a big influence. And I had the opportunity to intern with the U.S. Navy JAG Corps after my second year of law school. I loved it,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew it's what I wanted to do.
So before we get to your service, it's fascinating. So there's 5 in your family that actually in the military?
Correct.
And some are still current as well?
My brother Timmy, just above me, is still active. He's stationed in Virginia. And then my two older brothers, Mike and Dennis, they're both still active in the reserves.
Mm-hmm.
One in the Marines and also one in the SEAL reserves.
Right. So your one brother was on SEAL Team 6, right?
He was.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so probably some very interesting conversations about all of your service together, correct?
Yes, everyone has different stories, and theirs are a little more exciting than mine.
Right.
But everyone,
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely fun to get together and kind of share our experiences and places we've been and things we've seen.
Mm-hmm. So what year did you decide or actually join the Navy?
I commissioned in February of 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Took the bar exam here in New York and also in Connecticut. Passed the bar exams, and then I went up to Rhode Island, where they have what's called Naval Justice School. And essentially, you go through a legal training with the Navy and the Marine Corps judge advocates from each
Mm-hmm.
branch. We work together as part of the Navy Marine Corps kind of team.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to my first duty station the summer of 2007, and down in Norfolk, Virginia, at Norfolk Naval Station.
So tell us a little bit about what a JAG officer does.
There's a wide breadth of law that you're going to practice. So you can do anything from civil legal assistance. Every single service member has the right to legal aid, essentially a free attorney to help you out with myriad issues that are going to come up. Family law, wills, powers of attorney, custody. That any issue that can come up civilly,
Mm-hmm.
we're there to support. You also serve a criminal purpose, so criminal defense, prosecution as well. And then a big mission as well is operational law support to the combatant command. So basically, the ships, carrier strike groups, air squadrons. If there's a force someplace, odds are there's going to be a JAG attorney somewhere nearby with them, just making sure the rule of law is applied and adhered to.
So a number of years ago, I was actually chatting with a professor from West Point, and he actually teaches Sharia law at West Point, which I found to be fascinating. That there's actually a course on Sharia law in the military academy. So I would imagine, as a JAG officer, in a support role, you probably have to become familiar with the laws of other countries as well, correct?
To a certain degree. So I deployed to Iraq in summer of 2008 through the winter of 2009. And that was an interesting time to be there because we were there initially pursuant to the UN Security Council resolution. And then after that, it was a kind of a bilateral agreement between our government and the Iraqi government. And so to a certain degree, you had to familiarize yourself a little bit with Iraqi law and how it interacted with our law. But for the most part, to be honest with you, it was Uniform Code of Military Justice was a criminal law that we focused with, and international law was involved to a degree, but not in the work that I was doing. Where you see that more would be, which I've touched on a little bit in the reserves, would be maritime law when you're dealing with law of the sea. That's where international law comes into play.
So tell us a little bit about what it was like when you were deployed over in Iraq. So you were there for about 7 months?
I was there for 7 months, yes.
Okay. So what was that like? I mean, where were you stationed? What were some of the things you were involved with, to the extent that you can tell?
Sure, I can certainly tell you. I was stationed in Al-Anbar, Iraq, which is the western region of Iraq. I deployed with the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. Essentially, I augmented their legal support team. And so my job during that deployment was detention operations. So essentially, I helped coordinate with the local judge advocates from the Marine battalions that were in the given towns and regions in western Iraq as part of the release of detainees that we had in coalition custody rather. As we would release them, we would pair up with the judge advocates from the Marine battalions that patrolled those towns and villages to find out if there were local warrants in the Iraqi courts for the folks that we were releasing. So essentially it was a rule of law mission. As we released folks from our custody, we tried to get them into the Iraqi judicial system to the extent that they could take over their own government. And so it was kind of pairing up our rule of law with the Iraqi courts.
Right.
So
without getting too deep into the political aspects or the weeds in that part of it, what was it like working with detainees? That obviously these are folks that were suspected of ties with terrorist groups.
Yes, I think so. I mean, certainly that time frame of the war, I think there was a wider net cast to some degree, but certainly there are a lot of folks suspected of varying levels of bad actions. I can't speak to the specifics of it because truthfully I don't know the origins of a lot of their initial, what took them into custody. To be honest, I didn't have a ton of daily interaction with them. Mine was on a higher level as far as coordinating and making sure that as these folks get released from our custody, that we're not putting bad guys back into the Iraqi streets, and that if they are wanted for local warrants, if there are issues that are in their towns and villages, that we alert the Iraqis prior to their release from our custody so they can kind of take them in or deal with them in their own judicial system. So it was really more on a higher level as opposed to a day-to-day basis with them. Right.
So essentially, you'd have somebody, if they weren't suspected of anything, or they'd be released, but if there were others that had issues, then you would contact them.
Exactly.
Then you'd coordinate, make sure somebody was there.
If there was independent cause to detain them with the Iraqi courts, we would do so. If not, we would help coordinate a safe release so that they can go back and adjust to society again in their own towns and villages.
Right. So, I've always wanted to ask, a question like this of a JAG officer. I've met a number of folks. Mike Dieterich, who's a guy seems to run for a lot of offices in Rockland County. He's running for one now. He's a JAG officer, and you are, and there's a number of others I've met, but it's really not like the television show, right? I mean,
it's just like it.
It's just like it. You had really attractive female attorneys that were working with you as well, and constantly, and actresses chasing you around, right?
Right,
and you solve every crime, like murders and everything else.
Within reason, within a 48-minute time frame, generally.
Good.
I would say, well, it's not quite like that. They do manage to hit, you do get to cover a wide variety of laws, of topics as well. You're asked to travel. I mean, during the course of my time in Virginia, I got a chance to travel to back to Iraq for a couple of trials. I went to Qatar, traveled down to Jacksonville, Florida, and tried a murder case. So you get a chance to travel a little bit, which is fun. But yes, they take some creative license with the TV show, I'm sure.
So when you joined, I mean, did you really think you'd end up being sent overseas and, kind of all around the country, and it's got to be fascinating because you're dealing with a lot of different types of law, right?
Definitely. I think at the time I joined, that was one of the reasons I did join, to be honest. I knew deployment was a realistic opportunity and possibility, and to that end, deployment came up, a chance to deploy with the Marines. Having two brothers in the Marine Corps, I jumped at it. I loved my time at the Marine Corps. You really certainly appreciate when you're with them how fortunate we are to have people that are willing to stand up and do that.
Right.
And I also recognize, having been with them, just playing my little part, how important they are and the things they do for our country, and that people should truly appreciate and respect that we have people that are out there willing to do that.
Right. It's somewhat unusual, now in today's day and age for a family to have that many folks, actually, join and serve in the military. What do you attribute that to?
Good parents. My mom and dad were both great people. Both committed to public service. I watched my dad taught for 50 years, from 22 to 72. My mom's passed away a few years ago, but she had MS, and I watched her fight through that. She was a teacher. She went back to school and got her master's in social work, and they always stressed the importance of giving back. As I watched my brothers go in, it was something that became important to me as well. And it was just a great experience. I mean, I wish everyone could have that opportunity. You get a chance, especially being from a small town, a lot of times you don't get a chance to really get away and experience other things. And one of the best parts about it is that you go in and you're working with people from across the country who grew up in different backgrounds, different races, different ethnicities and religions. And you're all there, but there's a commonality about you. And you realize the kind of similarities that you have with people from different places. And it was a huge help to me to grow as a person, to see that, and to be around people from different backgrounds. It helped a lot.
Wow, it's just, I'm awed by the service of your family. I've known your dad since I was a kid, through St. Francis of Assisi in West Nyack, but and also through the school. So really, just kudos to him and your mom. Just absolutely incredible. Let's finish up with this. Your commitment now as a reserve officer. What does that entail?
So it's similar to an active duty. You still get assigned 3-year orders to jobs and responsibilities, and you can still get that wide variety of laws. So my first job in the reserves, I was doing legal assistance. So again, writing wills, doing family law support, that type of thing, giving legal briefs for people who are going to deploy. My second job, I worked out of a unit that supported the Pentagon, doing maritime law, basically, so law of the sea. And then right now I've switched in January, and I now support a unit actually out of San Diego, doing defense work again. So folks at the Navy has decided, for a variety of reasons, that they either administratively are looking to separate from the service. They have due process rights, and as part of that, they're afforded an opportunity to have an attorney to consult with one and potentially have one at a hearing. And so I'm representing sailors at hearings for the next 3 or so years.
And so how much time does that take for you?
It takes a lot. I mean, the travel adds up, but I'm happy to do it, and I have some familiarity with it. I've done an active duty, so to some degree, it's not as bad as it would be if I was doing it for the first time. But it's a balance. I mean, my wife works. We have 3 young kids, so definitely a lot of burden on her, and she's a good sport about it. So you just kind of make it work. But it's something that's important to me. I plan on sticking with it. Right.
And I would be totally remiss. I mean, we're just about out of time, but I'd like to take a minute or so extra. I'm going to steal away from the producers and talk to you just a little bit about your experience now as a police officer in Clarkstown. So how long have you been on the job, and tell us a little bit about what you do?
I've been an officer for about 7 years. I graduated the police academy in about this time in 2012, and I'm a patrol officer. So my current assignment is I'm a patrol officer on the midnight shift, and I respond to a variety of calls, medical emergencies, alarms, domestics, crimes in progress, traffic issues. So it really kind of runs the gamut. Similar to a legal background, where on any given day it could be a different issue, and it's kind of one of the nice things about it. Right. You get a chance to help people out.
So and again, I think the answer is probably obvious, but what made you decide to want to become a police officer, and in particular Clarkstown police officer?
Well, a police officer in general. I mean, a law enforcement background, or a legal background, and the public service element. It was kind of a natural fit with what I had done before, and a kind of a camaraderie that I also saw in the Navy I was looking for here as well. And as far as Clarkstown, I grew up in Clarkstown, spent my entire life here. My dad still lives here, my little brother's here, and it was an opportunity to come back to where I'm from and to get back to the community that I've been a part of. And no better place to do it than where you're from.
What's the best thing, we'll finish with this, what's the best thing that you like about your job as a police officer?
I think it's the opportunity to actually impact someone's day and have a positive interaction, have them take away that, that we're doing a good job, that we're there for them, and that when they see the police officers, it's a positive interaction, and then they realize that we're part of their community and we're there to serve them. And I think if you can keep building that trust with people, it's only going to help us as uniformed officers and also the public as well. And I think the chance here in Clarkstown to do so is fantastic.
Well, Officer Kevin Shea, I want to thank you so much for your service as a Clarkstown police officer, but more importantly, your service that we really focused on today as a naval officer and a JAG officer and a member of the reserves. Kind of an unsung job in a lot of ways, but an important one that folks don't probably understand an awful lot about. But it takes sacrifice and commitment. I want to thank you for your service.
I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back.